Hi. So I just had a conversation with Dave Markowitz, and we spoke about so many things. We wanted to continue our conversation, but most of all, the how can women help our highly sensitive sons and men? What to look out for when you have a feeling that your female partner might be a narcissist. We also spoke about suicidal thoughts and healing, lots of healing, um, healing for highly sensitive people and empaths. And I will read Dave's bio aloud, so you know a bit more about his background, his wonderful work. So Dave is a 2 times best-selling author, a workshop leader, and a master at co-creating a sacred container for the deepest possible healing. His empathic awakening, getting drunk without drinking any alcohol, took his understanding of empathy to a whole new level and catalyzed a powerful system of healing and protection for empaths that he's successfully shared with thousands. Dave has shared the lecture bill with Deepak Chopra and is the author of 3 books. 2 of them are bestsellers, and 1 self-published book was in Amazon's top 20 for 41 consecutive months by word of mouth only. I also have the Empathopedia. Read it. So I wish you a lot of fun listening to Dave, and there's so much insight. Okay, here's Dave.
I know where it was. I'm pretty sure I know where it was. I was really into baseball, and I think this was a field by Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame. That's probably a Dodgers hat in my hand. And being in New York, being a fan of an LA team wasn't exactly easy. And it was, you didn't know what happened in each game until the next day's paper. And because they played late, sometimes I didn't know till the following day. And I think when I went to Cooperstown, I saw all the memorabilia for the Dodgers and was pretty happy. That's probably a poster of, wow, I wouldn't have guessed, but I'm actually hearing intuitively. That's good. It's good to not have a reliance on memory, but to be able to intuit. That's a poster of Steve Garvey, who was the first baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers in the early 70s. He wore number 6. He was my favorite player. Oh, wow, I forgot all about this.
It is nice when you're looking at pictures. Yeah. Yeah. Did you already see sensitivity as something neutral or a talent, or weren't you aware of?
I was probably pretty checked out. I think sensitivity was a bit overwhelming at times. So, but looking into that little child's eyes, I can feel there was some sensitivity going on, and even his body language and his torso seemed very tender. Yeah, but as you may recall, I didn't own the word sensitivity or empath till much later on because that wasn't considered cool back then. But now, of course, it's super cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it just.
This might have even been around 10 years old, actually. I think my hair got longer as my teens got went along, and it got curlier. I had really long curly hair, especially by the time I got to college. It was just big and bushy, and I was into playing guitar loud and fast because it was the 80s. So this is the precursor for that metalhead kid. Early days of guitar playing, I really wasn't into the loud and heavy and fast. It was more soft, which ironically I'm back into now. Yeah, that's What else can you say about him? I know he was well loved. I know he felt safe. He had some good friends. Uh, he was scared of a lot of things too, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And I guess he's a part of me. I probably should speak to him some more often.
Yeah.
Maybe even this 10-year-old version, uh, as opposed to just that really young, tender version that we often hear to speak to.
Dave, do you have a special patent? Is that the word? Patent on um, getting drunk without drinking any alcohol?
I'm thinking many people have that experience, but that was my empathic awakening. Just prior to that, I connected with someone here in town who kept saying, you're an empath. And I kept saying, no, no, I'm not, for whatever reason. I really just didn't want to own the phrase, the word, and the whole concept, I guess. And I remember him saying, I'm the head of the Portland meetup for empaths, and I know an empath when I see one, and you, sir, are an empath. It was a scene right out of a movie. It was really kind of funny. And again, I just didn't want to own it. And then I went out that evening with a bunch of people that were celebrating a friend of a friend's birthday, and it was a party bus tour, and I hadn't drank really since college, and that had been, a good 20, 30 years later. And I was as drunk as I'd been in college, and I only drank water the entire night. And when I finally made it into a cab at the end of the night, Spirit gave me this pretty loud message. This is what we've been trying to tell you. This is what being an empath is about. You feel deeply. I kind of knew that already, but you also feel what's going on with other people deeply, so much so that you can embody what they're experiencing. And I think we all have had this experience in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you can walk into a room and maybe it's a funeral of someone that you don't know anyone in there, you just feel the sadness and you might start crying and you might have nothing to do with that person or the family of the deceased.
Yeah,
The
I'm that
opposite.
person. I do that. Most definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the opposite's true too. You can walk into a room where people are laughing and not having heard the joke, you could start laughing, not necessarily like to try to fit in, but just because something strikes you funny. You just pick up on these funny vibes. So I just became a lot more aware of the interaction, the energetic interaction between people in addition to the physical interactions, like the obvious eye contact and etc. So it was a good awakening, and from that moment on, I attracted only empathic clients. And I had a pretty successful business prior to that and was able to share my gift with many people. I lectured with Deepak Chopra, I had a best-selling book, and then Spirit just threw this curveball and I had to run with it because I really had no choice ultimately, right? So I was, whereas prior to that, doing more traditional medical intuition work, things like, oh, I have a back pain, I would intuit, oh, you have anger at your dad, and just a random example. Now I'm hearing things like, oh, this is your dad's anger that you're holding. So I had to really intuit how to work with that because it was a whole new system that was ready to be born. And fortunately, within a few months, there was so many commonalities between the people the new people that were being sent to me that I was able to really develop this pretty awesome, powerful, and also logical system, right? Sometimes these systems of healing are not so logical, and the left brain can have a field day trying to fight that. This one actually seems very linear, very 3D, in addition to the metaphysical aspects of prevention of incoming energy in a way that works with your gift, but also healing what's already been absorbed. So, it was this kind of magical occurrence that I couldn't have asked for because I didn't know it existed. I didn't even know I was needing or ready for a shift. But as you know, if our conscious awareness of things isn't the main driver in most people's personal cars of life, if you will. Okay. So Spirit had other plans for me, and knock wood, it's been really successful. I've written two more books since then. One was also a bestseller. One was self-published and was on Amazon's top
Yeah.
20 for 41 consecutive months, and that was just word of mouth. There's no giant marketing team behind it. And this was um, 2013, 2014 area. And granted, there was still a fair amount of social media, not as much as now, of course, but that's what made it take off. So I felt very blessed, very lucky, and it's continued. And who knows, I might get another curveball tomorrow. I might get something that, you
Yeah,
know, that pushes me in a different direction, and I'm open to it. But so far, this is working, so I'm gonna stick with it until until it doesn't.
yeah, yeah. So for the people who don't know what the difference is between an empath and a highly sensitive person,
Hmm.
can you briefly go into that?
Yeah, I can address that pretty quickly, I think. Highly sensitive is pretty literal, someone who can feel and sense what's going on with other people. I think an empath takes it one step further where we actually embody and keep what's going on with other people or groups of people or even the collective unconscious. So it's sort of like a sensitive on steroids kind of thing. It's like a super, well, now I'm seeing it as a superpower. At first it was a little overwhelming, but I had to learn how to work with it. And now I can teach that to other people as well. So I've heard people spend like hours delineating between the two, and I try to be really succinct. So that's just been my definition of it. Someone else can have a different one, but that's just what works for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah. So, what practical signs can you share um, with our sensitive male youth in order to recognize if they are connecting with something that is bigger, that comes through them, even bigger than just a human experience?
Hmm.
What sign, what inklings, what?
Because it's a non-tangible, it's almost difficult to put in words.
Yeah,
I heard one author call it a voiceless voice, where you can intuit information. And that might sound weird, but if you've had the experience, you know it. So maybe be on a lookout for this soft, loving voice. It's interesting how it seems there are so many voices in our head at once. We'll have a thought, another voice will say, "Oh, that's a wrong thought," and then there's this deeper awareness voice that can sort of witness all of those things. And it does take some practice to listen to that deeper awareness. So if you're hearing things or your voice is saying things you might not think are true, just kind of step back for a moment, sort of just breathe, and then maybe even ask yourself, is that thought true? And a lot of times it's not. And then there's an invitation to go to a deeper thought that can be accessed when we're a little bit quieter, when we're more accepting of those initial thoughts. I know it sounds a little weird, but if you try it, you might like it. I don't know how else to put it. And some people have more visceral experiences where they feel things, usually in the torso, sometimes in the heart or in the gut area, where something will just feel off or just feel open. So maybe another way to describe it would be, does it feel constricted or does it feel expansive? And the expansive is that deeper awareness, that deeper voice, that soul level, that spirit usually speaking to you. The constricted voice is usually the mind, which is sort of like a giant recording database of everything you've ever heard. So if at one point one or both parents indicate that, um, even if they say something very innocuous, like, "Oh, I'm really busy right now, can we talk later?" The child mind can perceive that as, "I'm not loved by my father." That can become a pattern. And I think one of the most powerful things I can probably share to the youth is, even if one or both parents are in pain or don't treat you with love, there is love there. I do believe this, and I get how that might seem unbelievable at times, or not want, or that you don't want to believe that, or you don't see any evidence of it. But I think it's there, and if we can tune into that, I think we'll feel maybe safer, more loved, and then as an end result of that, we can then be more loving to other people. So the sensitivity that you might be feeling and you might be hearing negative things about, I think it really is a blessing, and it's a gift to be able to connect with other people. In this example, even connecting with your parents on a deeper level beyond just voice, sort of feeling what they're feeling. And that creates compassion. And allows us to, what we send out also comes our way. So if we're sending out this compassionate energy, this accepting of other people, we'll get that back. I think most people really just want to be seen and heard at their core level, and a lot of people's emotional wounding is around not being seen and heard. So I think by tuning into that, we can see that's always there. It's just a little bit deeper in this version of reality, somewhat like that deeper awareness voice is within ourselves. We can access that deeper part of ourselves. But just know that you're not crazy and you're not wrong and you're not bad. And if other people don't get it, that's a reflection of what they're experiencing. It has nothing to do with you as a beautiful young soul.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's besides a strong knowing that this is my purpose in life, and you can also call it calling, but I also have that gentle pressure in my back where I know that it's like there's a line of children behind me who are gently but firm pushing me forward to go out of my comfort zone.
Mm,
And that
wow,
feels like, yeah,
that's a nice image.
yeah, it's very strong.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, then I'm curious. How did you learn to pick yourself up?
I learned what not to do before learning what to do. What not to do is to act like everything is fine, to put on this mask of I've got this. That's ego and it's fear speaking, and it's a fear of uh, not wanting to be seen as not knowing something or not caring. Uh, the healthier suggestion is to actually experience whatever you're experiencing. Let the feelings be there, even if it even if they're sad feelings. Sad feelings aren't a bad thing. It's part of life. We can't escape without it, and I don't think we can actually heal and thrive without acknowledging these parts of ourselves that most of us are taught not to acknowledge, and even worse, to judge and to repress, to be afraid of. And I would get how that would seem like that because if we were the victim of someone who was angry, for example, and they were yelling at us or worse, we don't want to typically repeat that. So we learn that anger is bad just by that experience of how we feel when someone's angry at us. So we don't want to send that out. But that's anger that's not acknowledged. So if you think of anger as an energy wants to flow, kind of like a river. You can't hold it back and expect everything to be healthy. The water always is moving and has to move for oceans, lakes, everything. And when we hold back our own energy, it's like trying to hold a river. It gets very tiring and it's not healthy for the ecosystem of the plants and fish in the river example, but our own inner selves, that's not healthy either. So if we let ourselves have the little bits of anger, and everyone gets angry, it's kind of normal. If we let ourselves be okay with that little bit of anger, it actually loses its power and never gets to the place where you're taking it out on someone else. So if I could go back and tell my inner self or my child self something, or anyone that's listening to this, try not to judge your anger. Actually recognize it's part of you. I'll give you a quick example that might make it a little bit easier to make more accessible. If there are, and there's no way to quantify this specifically, it's just an example. If there are 100 different emotions, and let's say there's 0 to 100, and 100 is pure love, and 0 is pure hatred, most of us tend to live around the 40 to 60 range, somewhere in that middle. Because typically when we're younger, we learn that it's not really okay to have our sadness. It's not okay to have our anger. So that energy gets repressed. We also learn that sometimes it's not even safe to be very loving, or what parents might call too happy. We hear things like sit still, even if you're just jumping around and joyous and singing songs, shut up, sit still. Like that's not their true self speaking, that's their wounding speaking. So what I think is important is if we embrace that at any time, we can be anywhere on that scale between 0 and 100, and to make friends with that possibility as opposed to trying to make any of those things wrong or bad, think there's a lot of freedom in that because the reality is that's who we are. I haven't met anyone who is not capable of being really angry, really sad, and really happy and joyous. But most of the time we spend time in the middle. So as we make friends with those energies, uh, they become more accessible and they don't take over. And even if you are angry, you won't hang on to it for months or years or decades. That gets really toxic for your body.
Mm.
That typically ends up in things like high blood pressure and heart attacks, and it could be a lot worse. So there's a health advantage, not just living well, but there's actually a health advantage to making friends with these parts of ourselves. And I wish I had been taught. Maybe even if I was taught that as a kid, I probably didn't believe it. So I'm maybe saying what I would have liked to have heard.
Yeah, it's incredibly important for the teenagers who are listening. Yeah,
Right. And unfortunately, here in the States, especially during the pandemic, suicides are up for
yeah,
teenagers, and it's a very painful thing uh, to even know about. But as the person who is in that place, if you are in that place, please know there are other opportunities. You know, it's never hopeless, even though I know it feels like it. And the more we accept that things might be horrible in a particular moment, at some point, whether it's a day or a month or a year later, obviously we hope for the day or less, things do get better. And if we're here to learn, some people say that if we're here to learn and we have multiple lives, like in reincarnation, we just come back to the same problem anyway. So it's really best to reach out for help. And if you're sensitive, to reach out to myself or anyone else on this wonderful summit to get that help and to be able to share what's actually true for you, to share that pain to someone that won't make you wrong for it. Sometimes you might go to a psychiatrist, because your parent says you need to go, and they'll say, "Oh, you're too this, you're too that, you're too angry. Here's a medication." And they mean well, and that's okay. But if that doesn't feel right for you, you can say, "I don't feel right taking medication. Is there another option?" So, whatever you're feeling, it's okay, and things do get better. I've been down in the dumps more than once in my life, and I think it's made me really appreciate life even more. So there's a reason for it. So if you're down, just reach out for help. It's okay.
yeah. Highly sensitives are are feel um, often very over responsible or overly responsible. What can parents do to in their communication with their children to
Mm.
help them with being over responsible?
Yeah, great question. I think depending on the age of the child, they may or may not understand if you say, "Hey, you're not responsible for my emotional state." If they are capable of that, you can certainly have that conversation. A lot of kids, I think, would appreciate hearing that. But I think even more than what we say is how we act and what we do and how we do things. That kids tend to model what their family and typically parents are doing and how they're being around things. So one of the best parenting tools I've ever heard is to be the best person first that you can be, to acknowledge and be okay expressing your sadness in front of your child and then saying, "You know what, mommy's sad right now and it's okay. Mommy needs to cry and it's okay." Like teaching the kid by example and in that case through words, but also letting yourself have those feelings. And it's very vulnerable and very scary. I get that. A lot of times as a parent, we might want to think that we need to show that we've got all of our, everything is all together. We've got it all under control because that the old school says that's what makes kids feel safe. And I kind of get that. But if it's a sensitive child, they know if you're full of it. Okay. So, just a real tangible example, if a parent is asked, a parent might say like, "Don't yell." Like if they're yelling, they're sending up a duplicitous message, one that says you can't trust me because I'm telling you not to yell, but I'm yelling while I'm saying it. So the kid will then close up emotionally and say, but their mind might say, wait a minute, what's actually happening here? And even if they're not verbally expressing it, and if someone says, oh, I'm good, and the sensitive child knows that you're not, then you're really teaching them to lie. And I don't think that's in your best interest, you know?
It
I
doesn't
mean,
feel safe to a child, you know.
yeah, it won't feel safe, right? So if you are acting in alignment with what's actually true for you and able to experience that and express that, I think it's actually very freeing for children. And I think it can actually decrease a sense of responsibility that a child might feel towards you as an adult, as a parent, because there's just more openness there. There's a deeper connection by being vulnerable. So it's kind of ironic because I'm not a parent, but as a kid, I can speak from that perspective, and I work with many parents, and these are the things I've heard to be most powerful. Just be the best you that you can be as authentic and truthful, and kids will pick up on that, and usually only good things can happen from there.
Else? What can women do? Because I
Sure.
believe women can do so much more, especially when we hear about um, or read about the ridiculous articles about 10 signs that a man wants something else from you, or boys will be boys, and that
Yeah,
sticks in your mind. Um,
yeah.
so I that's why I'm advocating for the men here. And I want
Thank
to
you.
yeah, you're welcome to show women um, what they can do to help because many women
I'll
want to.
speak from personal experience on this. Many women that I've dated in the past, I kind of had this idea that I had to look like I had my stuff together, basically. Not necessarily macho. I don't think anyone would accuse me of that looking at my demeanor, but I didn't feel safe being my emotional self around many of these women. Many were just verbal and just like, no, I need you to be this way. And if that's not who I was, it didn't create an openness and a trust. So as time went on and I got more comfortable being an emotional person, I began meeting people, women that were more comfortable with me being emotional. And the converse is also true because I can then be comfortable with their emotions. So it was this really acceptance of each other, of all parts of each other. And I'll share one particular time early on when I met my wife. I don't remember the specifics, but I was really upset about something and I was crying, you know, like a, you know, like a like a 2 day old. And she was just holding me saying, I love you. And I'm just in my fear, I'm in my fetal position, and I'm looking, I'm like, you love this? Like I'm like dripping, you know. I'm like, how can you love this? Because in my head, that's not lovable. That's what I was taught anyway. And she's like, of course, which helped me go even deeper into the emotion and helped me trust her more and more. So I think it sounds simple, and maybe it is, and maybe it isn't, but I think just by allowing man, woman, trans, whatever, just letting other people have their experience of what's actually authentic for them creates a deep connection and a trust and a safety. And I think ultimately we all want that. And there's also a chance that if we can express that even to someone who doesn't identify as sensitive, that our open heart can then open their heart. So I'd be the last person to tell a woman what to do. Okay, so but I can only share what I've experienced and what I appreciated more than not, which was just this openness, this like total acceptance of me in that moment, what I thought was my worst, where I didn't have my stuff together. I didn't know what the next step was, and I was just dripping and just, a mess. It's even funny that I use that word. I look like a mess. And now, years later, I don't consider it really a mess. I think it's beautiful. Whenever someone cries in front of me, I feel so trusted. And that's just a beautiful feeling. So I get to practice that, working with other people, men and women who are open to being vulnerable. So it's one of the first things I share in my sessions, actually. It's just an invitation to be vulnerable and authentic, and I tell them I will be as well. So there's this often immediate sort of fizzling away of some walls.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise, it doesn't work if you're not vulnerable yourself. Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not the kind of thing where I have to be like, so detached. I can cry if my client is crying. I might not want to have a full blown experience of it because I'm really there for them. But if I use the tools well, if it's uh, if it's my grief, I can process it later. They're asking me to be solid for them,
Hmm.
right? But at the same time, I don't have to be like a brick wall solid. I can be kind of permeable, and I think people appreciate that.
Yeah. 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 It creates a deeper level during the sessions. It's so much more valuable, and you have a clear, how you say, energetic space where you already hold space, but uh,
Yeah,
things come uh, through much faster, much more clear.
I
Definitely.
think that's true. That's been my experience. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll be able to intuit things on a deeper level. I don't intuit what they don't want me to know. It's very specific to what's needed for the healing to work. But yeah, I think it happens easier when we can be vulnerable and share and really get to the heart of the matter. What's really going on underneath what we're seeing and feeling. Like as far as a symptom, there's always something underneath it, energetic and emotional. And we can work with that. It has tremendous benefit on even the physical body. So clearly things that are emotional, like um, depression, anxiousness, um, but also physical things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. There's always an emotional element to these things. And I would even say the actual cause of most of them, obviously not all pain and illness is emotional related, but even things that are purely physical. For example, a motor vehicle accident, someone might say, well, I just got in a car accident. Of course, my body's going to be tight. But if we go under that, what's the energy that your body experienced during that motor vehicle accident? Fear, typically. That has to be worked with in addition to the physical therapy if that's needed, etc., to really get a good healing. So there's always, in my experience, there's always been an energetic, emotional aspect to every pain and illness that I've ever worked with.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. Yeah. So if you are a highly sensitive man and you might have the feeling that your partner, your female partner, might be a narcissist. What to look out
Escape,
for?
run. Uh, it is common that empaths connect with narcissists. Empaths can sense people who are in pain, and although the narcissist typically will never admit such, they typically are in extreme pain, and that's what creates the narcissistic shield that says, I can't be seen as dumb, in pain, not in control, whatever it is, wounded, even sad. Those things are just not open. So I firmly believe in that we attract people that are there to help us heal. This sad or scary part of being in a relationship with someone who's narcissistic is we sometimes don't really sense it. We don't really know it because they're really good at inserting what I call the energetic hooks. They hook our attention, and we, being the empathic one, the sensitive one, say, oh, there's a hook of my partner, and I'm going to help heal that. So I think it's important to remind ourselves, and this is probably true, I would say it's true with or without being involved with a narcissist. It's not your job to heal anything for anyone else. That has to be really primary. And I think if we really get that, there's be less of an attraction to narcissists. They still might be attractive in some way. Many times they're physically attractive, energetically, they seem confident. They're often entertaining and funny. Um, a lot of people that go into show business and music have that side, and it's not always unhealthy. Sometimes it's good to have a healthy sense of self. But when it's true narcissist, it's not healthy. And we have to try to, I think, try to step back and see what part of me is attracted to this person. Is it my true heart-centered self, or is it my pattern or my wounding that says I have to fix and heal everyone? And I think if you do that pretty often, at some point you might get some clarity. Is this person a narcissist or not? And is it in your best interest to stay with them or not? One other thing about narcissists typically is that they typically don't, I'm gonna say snap out of it, but for just lack of a better phrase, they don't become non-narcissist. They don't become non-narcissistic just by you telling them to, or by them even saying, "Oh yeah, that wasn't good." Is usually trauma that breaks the shield around the heart. So if we think about that, every time someone has a wound, an emotional wound that happens to them, even a physical wound and the emotional wound that goes with that, it creates a layer of protection around the heart. So it's kind of like this, they just keep going, going, going. Now they're very thin and it creates a fortress around the heart. So when people say my heart's breaking, what's often happening is it's that shielding is being broken. So if something really traumatic happens to a narcissist, that can break that shield, give them access to the heart. It's kind of like the Grinch. I don't know if you the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, I think it was, that something happened and he's like, "Oh my God, I have a heart." I should probably watch that again. Okay. Um, but there are things that we can do to access that heart energy, but the narcissist typically is so lost in their pain and the um, the manifestations of that pain and the not letting that pain being seen. But as the empath, really, it behooves you to really check in, even if you don't think that they might be a narcissist. Just kind of feel in a meditation or with a practitioner and say, what part of me is attracted to this person? And if it's your wounding, you might want to address that. And when you heal the wound, there's actually less of an attraction to narcissists, and they'll be less attracted to you because they won't be able to get what they think they need from you because you'll be in a better place on your own. So I could probably go on for like a month on empath narcissist relationship, but that's the gist of my experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hard to do in the moment. In retrospect, everything's clearer, right? Um, but if you can try that, I think it's a really powerful exercise. If all of your friends are saying, like, what do you see in that guy? You know, there's another there's another symbol or signal to think twice about getting into a relationship with them. Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we could go on forever. So, how can people contact you?
My website is my name. It's davemarkowitz.com, DaveMarkowitz.com. And all the information is there about what I typically do, about the healing processes that I take people through. There's the books that I've written are available there. There's blogs and lots of interviews. And you can get a good feel, I think, from the website. Most people say it's very easy to navigate. And some people just know, like, they just know right away, I need to work with that guy. And if you're not sure, I do free 15-minute consultations where I'm very happy to do a quick read or just listen for a bit and see, is it a good match? And if it's not, I'm happy to tell you that it's not because I don't want to waste anyone else's time and money just as much as they don't want to be, have their time and money wasted either. If I don't feel it's a good match,
Mhm.
I'll be happy to let that person know. And if it is, I'll let them know too. And sensitives typically know on a deeper level. So a lot of times I'm just confirming what they already know. Uh, and really everything's on there. And in addition to one-on-one sessions, I'm doing live streams, which you can are super economical, and you can join other empaths and highly sensitive persons from around the world. And I've been doing about one or two of those a week for about a year now. And there's a little community that's forming. People, say hi to each other, and I address specific topics, typically health and related topics, and then we do a healing meditation together, and then we offer time for sharing, which is really nice because I think a lot of times people wonder, am I the only one feeling whatever this, whatever that is? and someone else says it and everyone else nods. So it's a nice group. I really feel very blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. So 3 books. I have the Empathopedia, which is great. Really read it. And I want to thank you, Dave, for your insight and and your energy, your presence.
And oh, you're very welcome, and thank you so much for doing this. I think it's something that is very needed, and hopefully people listening can resonate and take something away from this conversation as well as all the other ones that you're having.
Yeah,
Thanks much.
you're so welcome.
I'm a highly sensitive man.